There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean Breathes Books. Welcome back to my channel. And what I expect to be an absolutely fascinating discussion with Virginia Evans, the author of a novel that just knocked my socks off, The Correspondent, which came out in April of this year. And I have just read it, and here we are to talk about it. Virginia Evans, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's great to be here.
Oh, what a delight to meet you and to have a chance to talk to you about this incredible work of fiction. I just loved it with all my heart. I read this to a cousin. She is my dad's first cousin, and she's a real literary. She loves reading, but I read to her every night on Facebook Messenger, and this was a wonderful book to share with her that way, and she loved it just as much as I did. So she'll be watching this interview quite avidly.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, start with this softball question. I think it's an easy one. Tell us about The Correspondent. Introduce it to us.
Yes, The Correspondent is an epistolary novel, which means it's told only exclusively through letters and correspondence. Primarily, it's handwritten letters, and then there's some emails thrown in there and some postcards. But the correspondent refers to the main person in the story, and this is a woman named Syibil Van Antwerp. She is, when the book begins, she's just turned 74, I believe, or 73. She's just had a birthday, and she is living alone in her retirement. She's divorced, she has grown children, she's a grandmother, and when the book opens, it's with a letter to her brother, and she's just going along in her life as she thinks it will go until the end, what she thinks of as the last era of her life. Throughout the book, you see how her life opens up. Instead of closing down, it opens up, and as you read through the letters of this sort of decade of her life, it's really a portrait of her whole life. And so every letter is a puzzle piece. And by the end, you have a good understanding of who she is and who she was, and just everything coming together to make a portrait of her.
Where did the story come from?
The story really started because I wanted to write a book in letters, and I have always loved this style of writing. I think it's smart, but it's also not overwhelming to pick up a book. When a book is written in letters, I think it feels easier to digest and also easier to approach. I don't know, there's something very forgiving about the page breaks. So frequently, there's those chunks of white space that your brain is tricked into thinking it's an easier read. And I've had that experience with books written in letters, with 84 Charing Cross Road, or The Color Purple is written in letters, Gilead, those kind of books where you're getting it's a conversation, but then you get these nice breaks. And I read a book like that in COVID, and then I thought that's what I was wanting to read more of. And whatever I am reading and enjoying is usually what I then want to try to write. And so I started with the letters, and I thought, okay, what kind of a person writes letters anymore? I wanted to write something modern, specifically did not want to go back in time. And I think when people hear about a book in letters, you think something from the 1800s you might find, but I wanted to do something modern. So it was a matter of thinking, what kind of a person is in modern times still writing letters all the time, prolifically, with enough story to tell a whole long saga. And so the character of Syibil came to me, and I really just I knew the character, I knew I wanted letters, and I knew that she was going to be an older woman who had lost a child. That was what I knew. And you know that from pretty early on in the book, that she's lost a child, and from a long time ago. And those were the three main points I knew. And then from there, it's just opened up, I guess.
I should say that this is going to be a spoiler-free discussion. If we decide to go into spoiler territory, you will be amply warned to either fast forward or go rush out, read the book, and come back. Are you a letter writer, Virginia?
I am. Yes, I am. I have always been a letter writer, and I also have fallen into the culture of email and text, but I also maintain regular correspondence. I think I try to write a letter or a note when it's something I want to say that it feels like something I hope the person will take the time to receive, some sort of gratitude or some memory or something that feels more important than just a text or an email. And also, I find when I'm approaching people that are public figures or authors, there's a little more dignity with a letter than just an email. So I do write letters and I do receive a lot of letters now after writing the book, but I just think there's something, it's an artifact to get a letter or to send a letter, which is, I like that.
Absolutely. And this novel came along at a time when all of the letters, I never throw anything out. And the farmhouse, we have sold our farm, the family farm. And so all of my archives are now in my basement here in the city, including all the letters I ever received from about the age of 10 until whenever I stopped writing physical letters. I've got them all, and I often kept copies of the letters I sent out. And so I've got all this stuff, and then I'm reading this novel. And so this was just a resonant nostalgia trip for me. Have you received letters, physical letters in the mail from
Oh,
readers about the correspondent?
yeah, it's been wild. We figured out early on that I was going to start receiving letters, but I didn't want to give away my, I didn't want to tell people where I live exactly. And so my bookstore, my local bookstore said, we'll be happy to receive letters for you. And I think we thought maybe they would get a handful of letters and then it would die out. Now it's like becoming this fun thing at my bookstore where they receive letters from all over the world for me and they keep them and they'll every once in a while send me an email that says come collect your mail. And then also people have been writing to my care of my publisher, and so I just received a package today with letters that were sent to New York. It's been so moving to hear from people, and because of the material of the book, the book covers a lot of things. It covers her whole life, and so there's lots of things that have happened in her life, points of pain or grief in a life. And so a lot of people write to me with sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's lighthearted, but a lot of the time it's really heavy. People that can relate to Sybil's experiences of pain and loss in their own life. And I've sat over some of these letters with tears in my eyes, just reading about how someone who can relate to her pain with their own life, and then they tell me about it. I feel really honored to receive that information. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Do you think that there's letters piling up to Sybil Van Antwerp at 17 Farney Road, Arnold, Maryland?
Oh my gosh. I have literally never had that thought, but yes, now that you say that, I do. And that address does not exist. So some poor postmaster in Severna Park or in Arnold is going to be thinking, who is this woman? Oh my gosh, I never even thought of that.
That's funny. Beautiful cover. In fact, I think it's my favorite cover of the year. Tell us about the cover
Yeah,
illustration.
I love the cover too with the birds. The cover was a journey. The cover was definitely a journey. There was an original cover that was a little more austere, a little more cold. Maybe I would say it evoked more of the pain and the challenge of Sybil's life more than some of the warmth of her current life. And so that cover I really liked. It was very artistic. It looked a little more like towards literary, I would say, or like a kind of a classic cover. And then they decided that was too severe. So then they moved to another direction. And then there was a different cover, which I really didn't care for. And then this cover was the third try. And this cover, I think, really nails it. They let me pick from a handful of different options, and this was my favorite. A lot of people have asked me why the two birds. There's not anything really specifically in the
No.
text that references two birds, but I think when you close the cover of the book, it fits. I think it fits.
It
And
just,
there's something, do you think so?
yeah, I just want it as a poster on my wall right there. Can
I
you
love
arrange that for me?
Yes, we'll just have one mailed to you. Yeah, I agree. There's something very peaceful about it. And to me, the two birds, I always think of it as Sybil and Rosalie. Sybil's
Rose.
best friend, Rosalie, is her lifelong pen pal. That's who I think of.
Let me segue right into tell us about their friendship. Tell us a bit about Rosalie.
Rosalie is a person in the story who is Sybil's oldest friend, and she and Rosalie were friends as children, and then they married brothers. So Sybil married one of the brothers and Rosalie married one of the brothers, and then Sybil divorced the one that she married. But so she and Rosalie were friends, and then they were sisters-in-law, and now they're ex-sisters-in-law and still friends. They have a very honest, candid relationship, and I would say probably Rosalie's presence and candor in Sybil's life is the greatest effect of change in Sybil's life in her older years. Her friendship with Rosalie forces her to be honest with herself and to confront things about herself and some events in her life that are challenging. And Rosalie is the unsung hero of the book, probably.
Absolutely. And that lifelong friendship undergoes a significant
Mm.
test in the book. And we're not going to say any more about it, but that was an important part of the story. There were so many things that I thought, oh, is this going a little bit off is this going a bit off the rails, or what's going on here? And every time I thought, oh, that's why she did that. And not that I could put into words why you did that, but you do a lot of unusual things here that I just loved. There's a blurb from Anne Patchett on the front, and then Sybil writes letters to Anne Patchett in the book. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I would love to. When I was writing this book, I had a book out on submission that wasn't selling. And so when I started writing the correspondent, my heart was still with the other book that I was still hoping would get picked up, which it didn't. And so something about writing the correspondent it was something I was doing to get a lot of things out of my body, mind, memory from my own life and just from, I don't know, I think I was just trying to get a lot of things out, but I never thought this book would be published. Never. I didn't even intend to show it to my agent. And then she got wind that I was working on something and she said, "Do you think I could see it?" And I said, "But we're not taking this out." And so I think when I was writing the book, it was just everything I wanted to put in it. I had no restraints on myself. For instance, throughout the book, this is not a spoiler, Sybil writes to Joan Didion. And Joan Didion writes back. And I think that's insane. I think that's insane that I did that, wrote
Yeah.
in the voice of Joan Didion. That's really gutsy. And I think I did that because I didn't think this book would ever be seen by anyone other than myself. But I wanted Sybil to write with Joan Didion. I wanted to bring Joan Didion into a normal context of friendship with a normal woman. And my experience with reaching out to public figures is that a lot of the time they reach back out and people are just people. If you receive a handwritten letter, I don't care if you're like the most famous person in the world, it's still fun to receive a handwritten letter in the mail, I think, especially one that's meaningful. And so I have received really interesting responses, really gracious responses from people you wouldn't expect to receive responses from. And bringing that into the book was really fun. Bringing that in with different people that are public figures now or who have passed away. It just felt, I wouldn't say it was self-indulgent, but maybe in a way, it was just fun. It just felt fun to bring these real world people into this tiny little theater of Sybil's life.
In addition to being fun, it was fun to read. It also fleshes out that part of Sybil's character. She's not only a letter writer, a correspondent, she's also a voracious reader. And she writes to make sense of her world, but she also reads to make sense of her world. And that's another part of the book that I related to so much. Another thing that you do that I just thought was so effective and can I say maddeningly effective, that you don't always give the replies to the letters that go out, but then the replies are referred to obliquely in other letters 60 pages later. And I just love that. How did that kind of narrative strategy take shape?
That's such a high compliment because I felt that the most challenging part of writing this book was the dance of what to say and what to leave out. Because I would say as much as or more of the story takes place outside the letters than what happens in the letters. Things happen between these correspondences that which when you say that, you think, then what's the book? Like, what's there? But it's something about this sort of black and white, the negative space versus the full space, and what's the negative of it, like a camera negative, a film negative, that there's something happening. It's almost like there's two stories happening, the story in the letters and the story you don't see in the letters. And it was really important to me that the reader would never have a moment where they said, "I don't believe that would be written in a letter." That you would be reading and you would think, "Oh, the author just put this in there because you have to know this about the plot." And so nobody would really say that in a letter. There's no need to say that. So I was so careful that I only would say things in the letters that I thought the characters really would write in a letter. So there were all these ways I had to find of moving the story forward just by referencing things or exactly what you're saying. Like if there's a lack of something, that lack of something has to somehow be referred to or outlined with the presence of something else. And it really was a dance. It felt like such a an interesting challenge as a writer, and it felt like the most satisfying when I could do it, when I was able to find a way through. And you would think a book like this, nothing would happen, but a lot of things happen in the story. But you're only seeing it from these outer lenses. I don't even know how it worked, how it really worked, but I do think it
Well,
worked.
the point is, it works beautifully. Sometimes there's just a long delay in getting a response to a letter, but sometimes you just don't get the response, but the blanks are filled in a short sentence or paragraph in a letter to somebody else.
Yeah, or a lack of response is the response.
Uh,
Sometimes that too, which I think is interesting and true in real life.
yeah, there's some pretty important unsent letters in this
Mhm.
novel.
Yes.
Another thing that at first I struggled with, and then I thought by the end was ultimately one of the finest, most resonant things for me personally, was that Sybil writes letters to the darndest people. People were like, she's a fairly elderly woman, and she's cultivating friendships with people on, and I'm going to express all this in a non-spoilery way, but she befriends somebody that's on a help desk at a software company. And she develops a correspondence that evolves into much more than a correspondence with a 15-year-old boy, a son of a colleague. And she demands to be let into a class as an auditing student with the new dean of arts and sciences, and that goes places that you wouldn't expect. And at first I was thinking, what is all this? And you showed me what it all was, and it just spoke volumes about the kind of person Sybil was. And that reminded me of the way I used to be. I was always trying to personalize relationships that weren't like, no matter what therapist I started seeing, they ended up becoming a friend, and the therapy went by the wayside. So I really related to it, and I just thought it was beautifully done. And I just wondered if you had anything more to say about it, about that aspect, Sybil's
Yeah,
character.
thank you. I think Sybil, with that kind of eccentric way that she will write to anybody, I think Sybil feels like everybody's the same. I think she feels like everybody's valuable on the same playing field. And that's how she sees whether you're a customer service representative at an agency or whether you are Joan Didion. She thinks we're just all people. And so if you're a person and I'm a person, then why shouldn't we have a relationship? And I love that about her. And I think I want to be like that, firstly. And I think there's something where, as crazy as it is and as unhinged as she can be, you do think, yeah, I can see her doing that. It's consistent. She's consistent with her eccentricity or her wild way of assuming the relationship, just always assuming the relationship. And when she came to me as a person, there's an element to her that's like my mother-in-law, and this is the way my mother-in-law is. She just, everybody's equal. You know, if you are the person at the window at McDonald's, you are the same to her as if you are like her husband's boss. She will talk to you the same way. She's just as interested in your children as the boss's children. She just has this way of thinking everybody's the same. And she also is the same as she's not beneath anyone and she's not above anyone. She's just the same. And that was the energy I felt off of Sybil when she came to my mind as a person, was that kind of Sybil has a lot of ways about her personality that can cause hurt or offense. She can be a little bit of a steamroller, but her heart is good and she is willing to say, I was wrong or I'm sorry. You have both of those things and you bring them together. And so I do think with her kind of writing to anybody, by the end of the book, you think, yeah, okay, she writes, that's who she is. It just suits her, it suits her personality.
And there's also an element of the cobbler's kids have no shoes, in that she has all these wonderful relationships with people that she has no familial or close personal connection to, but she befriends on a deeper level. But she's got some issues in her own immediate family that she has to work on and work through over the course of the novel. And I found that really interesting, as well as the fact that I think it was in a letter that she wrote, where she does muse on whether conducting so much of her personal life through letters was a way of keeping people or keeping the issues a little bit distant. I liked that nuance to it, that there was perhaps downsides to living one's life through letters
Yeah.
to exclusive degree.
And you know from the very first few pages of the book that she has an eye condition where she's going blind, and you know that's part of her journey. And so during this period of her life that the book takes place over, there's something about how her eyesight is deteriorating, but something else is starting to open up and see. And I think part of it is what you're talking about. There's something about this that she's having some late life thoughts about what am I doing? What am I doing?
It's perhaps a little too corny, but I'll say it anyway. Is she's kind of writing herself home.
Yes, I think you're right. I think that's beautiful and not corny.
Thank you. And also, a lot about the declining vision and how that is going to disrupt her modes of being in the world, writing and reading to such a degree. Really powerfully told. And you touched on this at the beginning of our chat, but just to return to it and shine more of a spotlight on it, just the dignity of old age and the opening up, as you said a minute ago, that in her 70s, a lot of things that were closed down, unexamined, hidden, secret, there's an opening and a resurgence, almost like a new life that she creates. And I love that part of the story so much.
Yeah, it's been really neat to. That was what I wanted. It was COVID. My career was not going well. It was a really tough time in our personal life, my family's personal story lifetime. And I think like I said before, it's whenever I start to write a new book, I write what I want to read. And I just wanted to read something that made me feel hopeful. I wanted to read something that made me feel good. And I know so much of modern literature is hard because I think there's the whole idea of a happily ever after, which I wouldn't say this book is, but I also wouldn't say that it isn't. I don't know. It's just a human story, but I just wanted to read something that made me feel hopeful. And so I knew when I started writing the story that the person that I was starting with, I wanted that to be a person that had things redeemed in their life, had things that were hard be brought around and brought out and see some beauty out of some hard things. And so I knew that was the direction in which I was writing. And I have had hundreds of people reach out to me in their 70s and 80s and say, this is such a refreshing read because there's not main characters or protagonists that are women like our age, or if they are, it feels like a lot of the time they're dowdy or not relatable to me, but this woman is relatable to me. This woman is me or is my friend or is my sister. And so that's been really neat to hear. That's the audience I most care about is those people, those women specifically that I'm writing in their world because I haven't ever lived in that world yet. And hopefully I will get to, but I've never been there. And so I've felt so much delight and joy in receiving those kinds of responses from women in that age group.
The cousin that I read this novel to is in her 80s, and as soon as I finish this interview, I'm going to loan my copy of the novel to my mom, who's in her 80s, and I know that she'll love it as much as Mary Jean and I did. Can you tell us about a recent letter you wrote and a recent letter you received? I'm not expecting personal revelations on a deep level, but just curious about that part of your life.
I recently, like I said, have been receiving a lot of letters from readers, and one letter stands out, and it was from a woman who said that there was so much she could relate to with Syibil career-wise and life-wise. And then she said something that I saved this letter. I don't save every single letter because it's becoming unwieldy, but I saved this one because she said, and this felt very Syibil-like to me that she said this. She said, "Don't you dare write back to me. Don't use your time to write back. Use your time to write another book." And so that felt a lot of people will write and say, "I'd love to hear from you." And I'd love to be able to respond. But it felt like a gift to be able to do that. And then I think letters that I've written recently, I still tend to write authors when I love their book. I tend to reach out to say, I love this, probably because it's my area of work as well, and it means a lot to me to hear from people. Most of my correspondence lately has been to back to readers who have written to me. I will say one more. One of my aunts had a son die years ago. And so when she read the book, she wrote to me. And of course I knew that it was big part of our life, the circumstances of his death. But when she read the book and wrote to me, I saw the letter and I saw her return address, and it made me so nervous because it's like the book touches something so hard that I haven't experienced. And so you have this feeling of, I hope I've done this well. I hope I've given this experience of loss enough dignity, or written it in a way that someone who reads it who has had that experience feels seen and understood in some way. And she wrote, and just without saying the details, her letter was just so moving. And it made me feel such relief as the person who wrote the story, that her response made me feel like, okay, it went the right direction and it meant a lot to her. So that was really neat.
I can only imagine what it meant to you. What are you working on now, Virginia? What's
Oh boy.
next?
I'm in the weeds. I'm in the weeds, Sean. I just looked down at my floor because the pages of it are all over the floor of my office, but I'm writing a novel. For me, a first draft takes two. So I have to write the first draft, which is just a like fire hose of getting it onto the page, and it's really terrible. Like just really badly put together. It's unhinged. It's just a mess. It's like you can tell I'm in despair because I'm in that moment. So then I print that, and now I've spent the last week or two going through it and writing all over it and sticky notes and reorganizing things. And now I will take that and I will go back to the draft and I will make a adequate first draft. But the book is about the making of a movie. That's probably where I should leave it because it still needs to have room to grow, but it's about the making of a movie and I'm really excited about it.
Wonderful. I won't say hurry up because that would just be rude. And I want to bring this interview to a close to let you get back to it. But what a gift this novel is to the world. Thank you so much, Virginia. I loved it with all my heart.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for reading it to your cousin or your aunt. That's very special.